that I see. I chose the feelings that I'm feeling right now. And my goal was set by me, and I've attained goals that I've set because I've wanted them. This is all something that is being self-motivated and self-orchestrated from a deeper place than most of us are paying attention to because we're constantly being redirected. But when we withdraw all of the blame from the outer world, I'm not this way because of what you've done, whoever you are, whether it's the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, my Baptist church when I was brought up, the camp counselor. I'm not this way because of what you've done. I'm this way because I have been under the spell of being redirected away from the source of my salvation, which only I can access. And I'm not to blame. There's no blame. It's just come home. That was the beauty of the prodigal story, isn't it? Like, you've gone away, you squandered, you got lost, you were in trouble, everything was horrible in that environment for you. But all you got to do is turn around and come home, and before you're even home, grace is coming out to embrace you. There's no blame. And the only way you can put on the robe and the ring and have the feast is if your mind has really come to terms with not blaming anymore. Period. Blaming is missing the fact that you've done it all to yourself, and in truth, you didn't change reality one iota. Because God's reality is changeless. And that's your reality. You've dreamt this journey of horror and pain and struggle and sickness and death. See, Tinkerbell is even here to say, wake up. This is not yourself. Come home. And in this coming home, as we're walking towards that horizon of home, there will come a point when that sun begins to dawn in our heart. And we will feel and experience directly what's being hinted at in these prophetic teachings and these revelatory teachings. This is meant to be internalized and then directly, viscerally experienced. It's the only other alternative to what you're living right now. See, before we get into our readings this morning, one last thing. This egoic magic, this dark magic, it's always telling you in its redirection, choose among these illusions. If you don't like this illusion, go with that illusion. So let's make sure all of our cell phones are off. And this is actually part of the redirection. See, one of the things you want to get clear in this kind of conversation is it's given on a spiritual level. And because it's within a spiritual dimension, there is this impure spirit that is holding our minds in this dark magic that doesn't want you to look. And so it will redirect you every chance it can with whatever it can. A phone ringing, a flash of a fantasy thought, a regret, and whatever. Whatever. And it's up to you in your vigilance to want to stay locked into this frequency that's going to bring you back into your light, that's going to determine what you experience for yourself here this morning. Okay? So this conversation is not another choice among illusions. It is a true alternative to sleep. It is a conversation designed to arouse, waken, stir you up so that you're not in any way beguiled by false choices. Okay? So we'll just start off with a quick quote from one of the epistles of the New Testament. And this is the second letter of Peter. And he says here, in light of this prophetic word, this revelatory teaching that comes through in history, you will do well to pay attention to it as to a lamp shining in a dismal place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. So this is echoing in my listening of it, the words of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says to Arjuna that the Veda, which is their prophetic word at that time in their culture, is like a drop of water to the realization of this inner light that will dawn on you, this spiritual knowledge that will emerge directly in your experience, which is like an ocean. So a man or a woman who is experiencing this oceanic presence will need the scriptures as much as this ocean would need a drop of water. But in order to get to the ocean, and this is where, we got to check our arrogance. In order to get to the ocean, we need some guidance. We don't know the way. So you find your guidance and you find that word, that revelatory word that really does speak to you and doesn't coddle or hold back the ways of having you really self-examine. Because remember, we're doing all of this to ourselves. Therefore, the revelatory word, the instruction, will point out to you how you're blocking it. What this false self that you so wholeheartedly believe is you is obstructing your spiritual knowledge. It's really, talk about a trip. It's a trip when you really begin to enter this inner space and begin to see directly how there is this alien idea, this false self that is insisting it's you. And your whole life you've been under its spell. And now that you're beginning to want to see, and these teachings point out to you the real from the unreal, you'll begin to discern where you've been this fake you. And that fake you is going to undergo this, as we'll look later in the conversation, this breaking down in order for that light to emerge. All right? So, rejoice. So we'll start with some Hafiz. This is taken from the collection, The Gift, and translated by Daniel Ladinsky. And this title is So Many Gifts. Right? So many gifts. There are so many gifts still unopened from your birthday. There are so many handcrafted presents that have been sent to you by God. The beloved does not mind repeating, everything I have is also yours. Please forgive Hafiz and a friend if we break into a sweet laughter when your heart complains of being thirsty. When ages ago, every cell in your soul capsized forever into this infinite, golden sea. Indeed, a lover's pain is like holding one's breath too long in the middle of a vital performance, in the middle of one of creation's favorite songs. Indeed, a lover's pain is this sleeping, when God just rolled over and gave you such a big good morning kiss. There are so many gifts, my dear, still unopened from your birthday. So we see in this that everything God has is ours. This is why the idea of sacrifice in God's mind is non-existent. There's no loss. There's no withholding. There's none of this scarcity idea in God's mind. It's total sharing, total giving, which means you have the totality, and so does every other created being. That's why even now, as we are emerging on the cusp of the dawn of a new age, we're starting to see this idea of free energy coming back in, where you could see that, like Nikola Tesla discovered over 100 years ago, the atmosphere can give us all of the energy we ever need without any pollution. It's this idea that we don't have to go scraping and scrounging. Just a quick historical side note, talking about the ego's redirection, that Tesla's ideas were, of course, the saner choice, but we went with the Edisonian ideas because you could sell stuff, like light bulbs and wires and such. So there were profit motives for going with the other version of this idea. So that's the old age. And it's a way of saying we're going to let go of these old systems because everything is interconnected. So when one thing is representing an old system, we can pull that thread and we'll see it all. The whole tapestry will come down. And the new age will reflect this total giving and abundance for all living things, not for the chosen few, where everyone else suffers at the bottom of the pyramid. So this is why you have to come out of the spell, because you're a brick in that pyramid, or you're a gem in the new age. One or the other, and don't underestimate the power of your choosing. So many gifts are here given to us, but Hafiz says that we're holding our breath. We're sleeping. So take a moment and actually breathe. Let go. Relax. And as you're doing this, a different part of your mind can be accessed. When you deepen and slow down your breathing, you'll change your brain waves. And you won't try to listen and understand this conversation from your beta waves and your frontal lobe. It will sink down into your heart. And as this information comes down into the heart, it will break up those clouds of darkness, and that sun will begin to radiate, and you'll feel the light of dawn in you. Because this light has been here, he says, forever. Long ago, he says, your soul, every cell of your soul, capsized in the golden sea of infinite light. That's why this outer or surface personality needs to break open. This frontal you that is such a smudge or a smear on the mirror of your mind that we focus on entirely as if it were the self. This frontal you has to be cleansed, wiped away, broken open. And then all of these gifts, all of this abundance, all of this knowledge, all of this love will flood your being and radiate out into the world, which will change the paradigm. because you will no longer be plugged into a universe of darkness and lack. You will have translated. And then here again, this image of the morning. Indeed, a lover's pain is this sleeping. When God just rolled over and gave you such a big kiss. We don't realize right now the beloved is right at the door of the heart, waiting for us to receive this kiss. Do not allow the magic of the ego to misdirect you. Take your felt experience back into these secret places within the heart, or this teaching is just a bunch of words with no effect. And like I say often, most of us are seasoned enough on this spiritual path. We've heard it all. We've read it all. And yet we're still thirsty. We're still longing. We still don't really know. Because that frontal you is trying to control it. Let it break open. And feel God's kiss this morning. And on that note, Hafiz, the seed cracked open. It used to be that when I would wake in the morning, I could with confidence say, what am I going to do? That was before the seed cracked open. Now, Hafiz is certain. There are two of us housed in this body, doing the shopping together in the market and tickling each other while fixing the evening's food. Now, when I awake, all the internal instruments play the same music. Quote, God, what love mischief can we do for the world today? So the cracking open, going from this isolated I that thinks it has its own life and is in control of it, the pressures, the struggles, the pain, the loss, all of the challenges and sufferings that we're going through is actually grace in disguise to crack you open. So that the solitary, lonesome, thirsty I can realize it's swimming in a sea of we. Being kissed and tickled. And then there is this going out into the world, he says, as the we. Seeing that everyone is either in this process of cracking open, has cracked open, or is still encased within the magical shell of the false self. And the we in you shines so bright and has the spiritual wisdom and skillful actions to midwife in whatever way is appropriate at that time through guidance all of these other souls that are in the hatchery. Most especially those that you're in close relationship with. That as soon as your isolated I and its selfish agenda isn't trying to use them as an object in your getting scheme, you will truly be there to share and be in loving service to them. And as a brief aside, you will also have put down many of these dysfunctional patterns that lonesome I has acquired along its struggling path, such as being willing to play the one that's taken advantage of, the one who is allowing others to perpetrate their selfish agendas upon you, and just allowing them to get away with it. That is not the path of awakened understanding. You don't want harm to come to you, and you don't want harm to come to them, and therefore healthy, natural boundaries will be set up where their dark games can't approach the light you now own and embody. If the pain and torture has been imposed by you upon you and taking it out on the cells of your physical body, as many of us do, you will see and know that that game too is over. And as this light radiates within you and you feel this capsizing of every cell within this sea of infinite divine kisses, your body will begin to take on more and more the radiance of health. Because your mind has gone from blaming and shaming to loving and embracing and forgiving. Now, on that note of cracking open, there's this wonderful little book by Watchman Nee. It's entitled The Breaking of the Outer Man and the Release of the Spirit. And what he talks about is that there is the outer man and the inner man. He's working off of the biblical model of anthropology. The outer man includes your will, your separate will, your emotions, your intellect, and your thoughts. That is then put within the casing of your physical body. So don't think the outer man is a physical body. The outer man is your seeming interior of will, thoughts, emotions, and intellect. The inner man is the radiant spirit that you really are. And because we're so cocooned within our thoughts, our emotions, our self-will, we have literally blocked out the radiance, the life, the health, the love, the knowledge, the expansiveness of our spirit, which is our natural inheritance. So the necessity at first by the divine hand is to break your outer man. Otherwise, you will not find life. Mirages in the desert, but not real life. So this breaking is necessary. And it gets to the point where you know where it's leading you, and because you're committing yourself to true love, true beauty, true goodness, it will start to feel ecstatic. Like Rumi exalts in some of his poetry about God being the winemaker and Rumi being the grapes. And God is crushing Rumi, and Rumi is in utter ecstasy because he's being freed from his outer man, the man of sorrows. So, just a bit from Watchman Nee. So remember, the real you is the spirit, the immortal. The spirit needs a mind and emotion and a will to express itself. So you could see how it will turn into a useful vehicle for you in the world. Everything, your thoughts, your will, your emotions will be divinized. Not done away with, but enlightened. In this union of your thoughts, will, and emotions with the spirit that you are will be the perfection of the great work. The spirit needs a man, and the spirit needs a mind and emotion and a will to express itself. It needs a living outer man, not a dead one, to express itself. It needs a smitten, wounded, and broken outer man, not a sealed and untouched outer man. Today, the biggest obstacle is with us. God's Spirit cannot break through us. His Spirit lives in our spirit, yet he cannot come out of our spirit. Our outer man is too full. It is full of things in its hands. We have to ask God for mercy so that the outer man will be broken and the inner man will have a way to come out. That I goes into we. And then there's love, mischief, play, Leela, that will unfold in your life as you shift from darkness to light. God does not destroy our outer man, but neither will he allow it to remain intact and unbroken. He wants to pass through our outer man. He wants our spirit to love, think, and make decisions through the outer man. God's work can only be accomplished through a broken outer man. If we want to serve God, we have to pass through this basic dealing. If our outer man is not broken, the Lord will not be able to have a way through us. He has to break through our outer man before he can reach others. That's why, in a more updated revelatory teaching within A Course in Miracles, the introduction says the entirety of the Course in a minimal amount of words. That this is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course because you're spirit and you're not at home in the alien will of the magic of the ego. It is a required course. Only the time that you take it is voluntary. So you have free will. You're free to choose what you want for your experience within this relativity. You're totally free. What reality tunnel you want to go down. He says later on in the text that as long as you're choosing to identify with who you're really not, namely this egoic frontal personality, you're going against the ocean of your being, which will create tremendous disharmony and dis-ease within your life experience. And remember, the ego's plan for salvation is, I'm this way. I have disharmony and dis-ease because of what you're doing. If only things were different, I'd be happy. So as long as we're under that spell, our free will is hijacked. And we'll just choose among illusions. But he says, eventually, and it could take eons, the pain threshold is reached. He says, The pain threshold can be extreme, but it's not limitless. So at one point, you will reach where you've had enough, and you can't go on the way you're going. Like the prodigal. Now you're looking around, you're in the pig pen, you're done with this system, with being in darkness and struggle. So free will then have you turn around and begin this journey of self-revealing. That's why he says free will does not determine the curriculum. This is back in the introduction. It only tells you how much you want to elect to take of this course at a given time. And then he says something powerful in keeping with what we've been saying here. The course's aim is not to teach you the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. Remember, you're swimming in love. It's like the fish trying to know what the ocean is. You've never left the infinite sea of divine bliss. So the course's aim is not to teach you the meaning of love. That's beyond what can be taught. Your outer man's will and emotions and thoughts can't grasp the infinite. However, this course's aim is to remove the blocks to your awareness of this all-encompassing presence of love. That's the game. To crack you open. This cracking open can take some time because, speaking in my own experience, like we were saying at the outset here, you can know all this stuff. Even now you could be like, yeah. And then as soon as you're, asleep, back in the ideations of your lower mind, it's total redirection. That's why oftentimes it takes tragedy, unfortunately, or fortunately. It takes great suffering. It's like we met with a friend a few weeks ago, and, for the past few years, he's been really, in the world's eyes, in a major breakdown. Huge. Just like, if there wasn't grace overshadowing his life, it could really be something like, you kind of want to flush your experience at some point. It's just overwhelming. One thing after another, after another, after another. And yet, in a talk that we had recently with him, Lisa and I, it's actually the greatest blessing and the signs of success for him. It's like, beware when you're too comfortable and too sure of yourself and smug. Because as he says in A Course in Miracles, what you consider to be your greatest successes have been your worst failures, and vice versa. Because in the lower mind of your separate thoughts, emotions, and will, your game is to acquire things and people and kind of meet the society at society's terms. And then you've arrived, and you're successful, and you're materially comfortable and happy. But all that's done is it's thickened the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. Now, as the Buddha said, some of us are really sensitive horses. The outer man could be a sensitive horse, and all you need is and we'll move in the right direction. But many of us, as the Buddha said, Even when we're taking the spur and bleeding, we're still like, huh? But I want it this way. That's why the greatest successes often come when we're on our knees. That's when you can find the treasure. When your whole house collapses and everyone betrays and goes away, then maybe, if your free will is moving towards sanity, you'll begin to see what's really valuable. And then, I was going to bring this Rumi poem along, but I didn't. But he gets to this where he says, when your house crumbles in this breaking of the outer man that's so necessary, God will rebuild it. It's kind of like Job. Job gets put through the ringer. Everything crumbles. And then he's blessed at the end with abundance that's beyond where he was originally. And Rumi gets to that idea in his poem. That it doesn't mean that your life will end up being a perpetual struggle and material hardship will just be inevitable if you follow this path. Remember the starting of this conversation. There's no sacrifice in God. God wants to give you all that he, she, it is. And bless your life, flood you. But if you're in a frame of mind where you're still under the spell of this insane tyrant of an ego, you'll misuse all of that wealth. Lisa pointed this out to me many times. Like, things are withheld from us until we're able to use them in a healthy way. If I were rich when I was young, I'd probably be dead or the biggest jerk you'll ever meet. No joke. So things are given at the right time for the right reasons when you're surrendering your will to have this take place for yourself. And then it will be brought in abundantly, as much as you can take at a given time. Is this all getting across and communicating? All right, so the last one from Hafiz. This talking rag. It was all so clear this morning. My mind and heart had never felt more convinced. There is only God, a great, wild God. But somehow I got yanked from that annihilating realization and can now appear again as this wine-stained, talking rag. This annihilation is the joy. When you're completely broken from that solitary, suffering self, and you go back into that blast furnace of divine love. All your needs are met. You're home. You're loved with an infinite, unshakable, changeless love. None of the ephemeral images of this quickly passing, fleeting world could ever satisfy the spirit in you. We're wandering in a desert, trying to find something to slack our thirst and feed our bellies. It's only when that solitary wanderer finds the right path and is annihilated in the process that all the abundance and food and drink of creation comes to satiate you. But somehow, we get yanked from this annihilating realization. That's the practice. As soon as you recognize your little self is trying to drive your life again, wake up. Step back. Witness. And then allow this light to dawn. The light, when you are witnessing, can become increasingly brighter, like the sun rising on the horizon. As this sunshine begins to radiate on the parts of you that are still in shadow and trying to control and, get into these emotional ghettos or these self-inflated ideas about yourself. As soon as you recognize this grandiosity or littleness coming in, whatever form is trying to play out within the magic of the ego, the light of your witnessing consciousness can wither those roots. And once those roots are withered, more light comes in, is added to you. Like even Freud recognized this in his psychoanalysis, that when you withdraw the libido, the vital energy from your dysfunctional patterns and neuroses, what was fueling and causing that energy to show up dysfunctionally gets reintegrated back into your natural awareness, and you brighten and you raise in frequency. And that's what happens. Like that beautiful statement of Padmasambhava in the Lotus-born biography, my food are the concepts of duality. So whenever you're lost in these dualisms, in this split-minded thinking, you eat those things through witnessing them, digesting them, knowing they're false, and wanting God to replace them. That's the self-annihilating realization. And then the isolated I withers. And what emerges on the altar is the divine we. And that we includes all life. So back to the beginning and the final phase of this talk. We cannot enter the secret garden, this Edenic bliss of the heart's true nature, if we are holding grievances and condemning anyone. It just can't. You lock yourself out. You bar your way. Because your free will is still under the thraldom of thinking that by attacking somebody else, you can escape the guilt you feel, the loss you feel, the sadness you have. Somebody else did this to me. You can't enter back on the throne of your being. You won't even know it's there. The more you're feeding that dark wolf in you that condemns and blames, God will become less and less real in your mind. And you'll be convinced. It will be real. There's no God. I don't feel that. I don't believe that. That's nonsense. That's ridiculous. The more you feed the other self, it needs to have God absent. But when you annihilate that self, then God is the only reality. Eventually, you'll come to see that. But how much pain will it take? I'll leave that with a ... The blue bag's going to go around. The church thanks you for your generous offering. And if you're joining us on Facebook and would like to donate to today's service, as always, you can go to unityofstewart.org and there donate for the 8 a.m. service. Please make sure you've selected that, and thank you. Anyone have any thoughts or questions that they'd like to air? Jerry. Thank you. Bless the offering. And so we pause for a moment knowing that we can charge objects with divine intention. And so we do with the energy that this money symbolizes. May it be used as good seed in this world to bring joy and happiness and the healing of all suffering. And so it is. Amen. Anyone else want to share? Questions, comments? And remember, I'm not shy if there's pushback. I eat those concepts. And I'm kind of a little hungry. Well, Padmasambhava was asked, who is your father, who is your mother, and all these other questions. And then he was asked, what do you eat? Because he was this 8-year-old boy sitting on a lotus in the middle of a lake somewhere in Pakistan. And so, according to the legend, he says, my food is are the concepts of duality. In other words, he never leaves the vast, infinite expanse of this oceanic presence of all-encompassing love. That's his native home. That's his mother. That's his father. And so he will not allow anything that denies that to be real in his mind, knowing it's not. So he alchemizes all the traces of denial of reality. And so that's when we are seeing with Watchman Nee, the outer man can become this instrument of the radiant presence of spirit. And so all thoughts, all emotions, all acts of will be transmuted. You'll be the crucible of the great alchemy. And that's why you're being positioned where you are. Because once your nodal point lights up, it's going to be this network of transformation that will spread across the globe. And this is not hyperbole. You're here with purpose. That purpose might be completely obliterated from your frontal mind. But as long as you want it, you'll find these scents. You'll get the breadcrumbs. You'll follow the trail. And eventually you'll see that no concepts of duality will remain appetizing or will remain as real to you. Okay? Final thoughts? Continue to self-annihilate, my friends. Let's stand and close out. And so we bow within the heart, knowing that we are on the borderland of infinite love, infinite joy, infinite abundance. And it will come through in forms that will have us delight. And so we open ourselves to this. We clean the mirror of our mind. We open the channel to the Holy Spirit, which will connect us to this oceanic presence and flood our life with divine blessings, infinite. And in this process of opening and trusting, we know that the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful Sunday, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Remember, if you're interested, Thursday evenings, Course in Miracles Zoom class, living-acim.com.